The water is already at his chin. It started as a few stray drops inside his helmet. Annoying, easy to ignore. Now it's a rising pool, creeping up over his mouth, and he is floating in the vacuum of space, where pulling that helmet off means death in seconds. He can't wipe his face. He can barely see. And the only way back inside is a long, blind crawl across the outside of the station. He has minutes. We'll come back to him. Because to understand how a man nearly drowned in the one place with no water, you first have to understand what a spacewalk really is, and why it may be the single most dangerous thing a human being has ever volunteered to do. Picture yourself out there, 400 kilometers above the Earth. The only thing keeping you alive is a suit half an inch thick. Behind you, a void with no air, no pressure, no warmth, one that would kill you in about 15 seconds if it ever got inside. In front of you, the whole planet slides past in total silence. Impossibly beautiful. Impossibly far from help. Astronauts call this an EVA. What it really means is simpler. Out here, you are your own spacecraft. Everything keeping you alive has to fit inside a suit, and that suit has to survive one of the most hostile places in the universe. Start with the temperature. In direct sunlight, the outside of that suit can climb past 250 degrees Fahrenheit, slip into the station's shadow, and it plunges to nearly 250 below zero. And because the station laps the Earth every 90 minutes, an astronaut crosses that line, blazing daylight to pitch black and back, over and over during a single walk. Your suit has to survive both extremes, sometimes in the same hour, with nothing but fabric and a thin cooling system between you and either one. Then there's the vacuum. Without pressure pushing back on your body, your blood would begin to boil at normal body temperature. Not from heat, but because nothing is holding it down. The suit is the only thing preventing that. A pressurized shell wrapped around a body evolution never built for this, holding a tiny bubble of Earth around you in the middle of nothing. Now try to move in it. The suit is inflated stiff, like a tire, so every motion, bending an elbow, closing a fist, means fighting a balloon that pushes back all day long. Astronauts call a 6-hour spacewalk one of the hardest physical things they've ever done. Some come back inside having lost fingernails, worn away from gripping tools against that resistance for hours. And through all of it, one thing connects an astronaut to the station: a tether, a cable, maybe a small emergency jetpack on their back. That's it. That thin line is the entire difference between dangerous job and gone forever. Let that sit for a second. The only thing between a human being and drifting alone into infinite space with no rescue coming is a cable about as thick as a garden hose. And that danger is not theoretical. Remember the astronaut with the water in his helmet? A cooling line had leaked, and in zero gravity the water didn't fall. It clung to his head and spread, a growing film sealing over his eyes, his nose, his ears. He couldn't see the station. He couldn't hear clearly. He felt his way back along the handrails from memory alone, blind, while his crewmates on the radio tried to talk him home. He made it inside with, by some estimates, only minutes to spare before the water reached his mouth. NASA grounded spacewalks for months afterward, all because of a few drops of water in the one place you can never wipe your face. And this is not a new danger. It's as old as spacewalking itself. The very first human ever to float free of a spacecraft nearly didn't make it back in. Out there, for the first time in history, his suit ballooned so much in the vacuum that his gloves and boots stretched loose, and when he tried to climb back inside, he no longer fit through the hatch he'd just left. With his oxygen ticking down, and no one on Earth who'd ever faced this, he made a call nobody had authorized. He cracked a valve and bled the air out of his own suit, deflating himself just enough to squeeze through, gambling with his oxygen to avoid being stranded outside forever. He made it, heart pounding at nearly twice its normal rate. Every spacewalk since has been shaped by those 10 terrifying minutes. Then there's the danger you never see coming: debris. The space around Earth is full of tiny fragments. Flecks of old paint, shards of dead satellites, bits of spent rockets, all moving fast enough to turn a paint chip into a bullet. A piece smaller than a grain of rice can punch clean through a suit. The station's own windows already carry the scars. Small craters chipped into thick glass by specks far too small to ever see coming. On a spacewalk, an astronaut is standing in a slow-motion shooting gallery, and the only defense is layers, planning, and luck. And if a tether ever failed with no jetpack to save you, you wouldn't fall. There's no falling in orbit. You'd simply keep drifting at almost the same speed as the station, close enough to see it clearly, close enough to scream, and yet slowly, silently separating, with nothing to push against and no way back. Just stillness and a shrinking station, forever. That nightmare is exactly why every astronaut wears a last resort lifeline, a small jetpack built into the base of the suit. If the tether ever snaps, they can, in theory, fly themselves back, firing tiny bursts of gas with a hand controller, closing the gap one careful nudge at a time. But it holds only a whisper of fuel, enough for a single rescue and no more. Train for it as they might, every astronaut who straps it on knows the truth. If they ever actually need it, they get exactly one chance to get it right. On top of all that, the clock never stops. A suit holds only about 6 to 8 hours of air and power. No refueling, no calling for more. Every task is timed against that number. And even seeing out there is a fight. The visor is coated in a whisper-thin layer of real gold, just enough to see through there to bounce away sunlight fierce enough to damage an astronaut's eyes in seconds. So how do you train for a place you can't reach? You go underwater. Astronauts spend hundreds of hours in a pool big enough to swallow a jumbo jet, in a suit weighted to hang perfectly still, neither sinking nor floating. The closest thing to weightlessness on Earth. And everyone knows it's imperfect. Water has drag that space doesn't. A diver can always surface. Out there is no surfacing. For every single hour an astronaut will spend walking in space, they train roughly 7 hours in that pool first. Even the fear is strange. Veteran spacewalkers describe looking straight down past their boots, seeing the whole Earth turning far below with nothing in between, and feeling a sudden primal urge to grab onto something, even though every tether is already secure. They call it the fear of falling that never comes, because you and the station are falling together, endlessly, around the planet. Knowing that, and feeling it in your gut, are two very different things. So every walk is planned for months, sometimes down to the position of a single finger, because there's no improvising once you're outside. Every tool is tied down, because a dropped wrench doesn't hit the ground. It becomes a bullet in orbit for the next 50 years. And yet, after the temperature swings, the stiff suit, the debris, the flooding helmet, the thin cable between them and forever, astronauts almost all say the same thing, that it was the most profound moment of their lives. Hanging there, tethered to a station the size of a football field, one thin layer from instant death, they say the fear vanishes the instant they look down and see the whole Earth turning silently beneath their boots. Many admit they cried inside their helmets. Some call it the closest thing to a religious experience they've ever had. Here's the strange truth underneath it. You'll probably never wear a suit that survives 500-degree swings, or work a job where a garden hose cable is all that keeps you from vanishing forever. But for the people who strap in and float out anyway, with the whole planet spread beneath them, it isn't the danger they remember most. It's the silence and the view.